Is this on? Am I audible at the back?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Sid. Um, this is me. I thank you for joining. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for joining and thank you for attending this interesting one. I have a feeling that this is new to many of you. How many of you are interested in open source? All the room? Great. I'm glad nobody's walked into the wrong room. How many of you are interested in videos in particular? About 50%. Okay. So then my goal for the talk is to get the other 50% of this room sort of interested in the topic. And if I can get some of you to tinker with technologies like this after the session, then mission accomplished, right? Um, I don't have a dedicated slide to myself right here. There isn't much to say. I'm Sid. Most recently I used to work as a lead design engineer. A design engineer is sort of what we call a hybrid between a product designer and engineer, somebody who's just sort of trying to marry both the worlds. I work on problem statements that solve for and put the user at the crux of everything, and then I try to apply a technical lens to it and see what sort of um, solutions we can come up with that would be very difficult to imagine if you weren't quite as technically literate as somebody working in engineering, right? Um, all of you are more qualified engineers than me. I don't have a bachelor's in technology, I have a bachelor's in design. That didn't stop me from writing some code, but I preface that to say that we won't be looking at a lot of code today. That's not what my strength is. But hopefully, what I will do is I'll give you some ideas on what kind of code to write as you go, right? So, um, as I said, I used to work as a lead design engineer in one of India's biggest travel startups called Headout. Headout is an experience marketplace. We used to sell tickets to real life events, concerts, museums, skydiving, Formula One. There's something for everybody. And as I wrapped up like a 4-year career over there, we along the journey developed this fascination with media, imagery, and videos because we saw the impact that it could have on people's purchase decisions, right? You would want to look at a show that has a sparkly trailer. You would want to buy tickets to a skydiving experience because it's very thrilling to do so. And along the way, we sort of like uncovered this need for cracking video at scale. And that's where some of the premise of this conversation came about. I love video, I love media. I'm a designer, I work with imagery, I work with sound, with audio. Um, I have a feeling a lot of us watch a lot of videos on YouTube, and Netflix and Prime Video is just generally a very fascinating space. Somebody said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, a video is like 1,000 words at 30 FPS at the minimum, right? So you can sort of imagine how much it is possible to pack in a very short form medium like this one. The problem with video, though, is that you have to speak a certain language to be able to understand it well. Premiere Pro, After Effects, there's DaVinci Resolve, you have to think in keyframes, you have to have a lens with which to look at. I see a lot of people using Sony cameras in particular, which are very well known for their video quality. So there is quite a few handful amongst you who are very literate in this language like this. Unfortunately, I imagine this to be true for a lot of us, myself included. This is not the language that I am most proficient in or most comfortable in. My kind of languages are things like this: HTML, CSS, Node.js, Visual Studio Code, React, TypeScript. I have recently started dabbling in Rust also. So this is my kind of language. And I wanted to marry my kind of languages to my favorite medium, which is video. And that's where the premise for this session is, right? So I'm going to show you a tool that lets you write videos, MP4 files that you can play, upload to YouTube, watch on your phone, share with your friends, using the tools and languages that you're already familiar with. And to facilitate that, one of my favorite projects that's done this lately is a project called Remotion. Show of hands, has anybody heard of or used Remotion before? One person at the back. Oh, great. Awesome. That means this is going to be a very exciting session for the rest of you. So the basic concept of remotion is quite simple actually. You write React code, you know how to write it already, or at least that's what we assume. And remotion helps you convert that into playable video, writing video in React, which is an alien concept, but one that the more you dissect it, the more palatable it gets over time. And it's built on three simple ideas. Number one, a video is just a series of images. Makes sense, right? That's how animation works. That's how Mickey Mouse was invented. That's how the Pablo's, early films were done. So the first idea makes sense. The second one isn't quite as new either. An image is just a screenshot of a website. You all can make websites, all of you can. And you all can screenshot it also. This is how a lot of open graph image generators you might have seen on GitHub sort of start, right? You make a website, you lay out, you write your markup, style it with CSS, and then you take a screenshot and voila, you have your image. But the third idea is what brings this all together. We can automate a browser. And that's not new either, right? That's how test cases are run. That's how Puppeteer works, Selenium works. We have all these sort of automations that we run. We also have tools to do all of these, right? To make a video using series of images, FFmpeg does that. If an image is just a screenshot of a website, we can build it in Chrome using React. And we can automate browsers using Puppeteer and Selenium. Now, remotion sort of inherits all of these ideas, and you can see where I'm going with this. Remotion combines all of these together in a very compact package and says, hey, you know what? You write your code in React, and we will use these three ideas to convert that into video. And here's how it loosely works. This snippet of code will be familiar to a lot of you, especially if you write React. It's a component that has certain props passed into it. You can see that we are defining essentially what a composition is. Now, composition, for those who don't know, is an inherited term from video editing technologies, where you specify sort of like your canvas. Like, this is how large my video, this is what the resolution is, this is what the FPS is. And so we do that right here. We specify the duration in frames, we specify FPS and width and height, and we sort of like tell our end state of the video so that remotion knows how to render it. But the real magic comes in this next step, because when you're actually writing React, if you think about it, remotion gives you a hook that's called use current frame, and use current frame is nothing but a counter that keeps counting up. It goes from 0 all the way up until however long you need it for. And the idea is that if you think of a video as essentially an app where your frame number is stored in a global state of sorts, you can manipulate the contents of your page, of your frame, based on the frame number. And so you can see I have this small markup snippet right underneath it, which just says that based on the current frame, you change the contents. And what that means is, loosely speaking, you lay out your website the same way that you would want it to appear. That's how you design your video. We expect to get a frame, and based on that frame, you can change the contents of your website to ensure that things are moving. And here's how the rendering process works. You spin up a server with Node.js. You open your Remotion project in Chrome, or Remotion sort of uses Chrome to open your project. And the reason why this is Chrome specific is because you have to guarantee a certain consistency across platforms, and if you sort of like don't rely on the most mature browser in the world to sort of like get that consistency, things might break from platform to platform. Step 3 is that you screenshot the frames in your video. And what that means is, what Remotion is essentially able to do is pick up your React app, give it a frame number, get a still frame, screenshot it. Move to the next frame, open it in a new tab, screenshot it, keep it again. And once you have screenshotted all the frames in your video, The last step is quite straightforward, right? You collect all of these screenshots, you bundle them together, and you get a very neat and clean MP4 file. It sounds overly complicated. It's a video. Why would you want to first make a website, spin up a server, um, rely on something like a browser to render it, screenshot all of the frame? That sounds like a lot of work. And then stitch all of the frames back together. So we make a website, we code it, we put in our heart and soul, do all the design work, only for it to be just screenshotted and then stitched back together. It's a little counterintuitive, the more you think about it. But the beauty of using Remotion is that anything that you do on the web can also be done in the video, right? Because it's essentially just screenshots. So whether it is Mapbox maps that are powered by data, or WebGL, or SVG, or Canvas, all of the React ecosystem is sort of open and available to you for you to use on your blank canvas to make your video. You can animate with your favorite JavaScript libraries. You can design with Tailwind or with whatever styling solutions you like. And then instead of going through the phase of like learning to hunt for which color tools are where in the Premiere Pro UI or the DaVinci Resolve UI, you can use CSS filters or SVG filters. That's something that I have a feeling that a lot of you are more comfortable with than exploring UI for video editing tools. But why would I code? My output could be quite basic. I'm not a designer. I'm maybe better at Premiere Pro. Maybe I just like editing video, right? Hiring for video editors is perhaps cheaper than hiring engineers. That's fair. That's fair criticism for all of this. And so let's dial back a little and sort of like review the pros and cons. Pros, you have a lower learning curve than just learning to use Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve or something like that. Cons is that it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort from you that might come from somewhere else. But you see, when I was encountering this idea, right, or so the need for this idea came from a place of hypothetically imagine, right, that you work at a company that sells tens of thousands of experiences, and you know in your heart that videos like this one that show you like this beach and this location marker of where you have to be compels your users to make that purchase sooner. You would want to do that for all of your tens of thousands of experiences. And doing that, if you don't have something like a Remotion, will require you to hire hundreds, if not thousands of video editors, which at that point becomes quite impractical. And so like many things technology, one of the most unique applications of something like a Remotion is to do videos at scale parameterized, or videos with props. Essentially you can pass in like, hey, I want my highlight color to be red, or I want this latitude and longitude marker to be the one featured in the video, or I want to use this font or typeface because that's what my brand requires. And that makes it possible for you to code and reuse these templates that you can then render hundreds and thousands and millions of videos with. So maybe you want to do an animated explainer like the map one I just showed you. Your company wants to pull off a Spotify Wrapped. How do you think Spotify Wrapped is pulled off? I doubt they've hired one video editor per customer to be able to send that one email with the video, right? That sounds quite unpractical. And so, like all things technology, part of Remotion's beauty sort of comes through in its scale, or in how it scales. The scale comes with a cost, but the cost is not the same as a different rendering methods cost, because you would have noticed, if I go back a few slides, in our rendering here, I put renderer there in quotes because this is not what actual video rendering looks like. In the technicality of rendering to a video is a lot more complex than what I've shown here. There's muxing involved, there's encoding involved, there's decoding involved. Sometimes you have to transfer color spaces and things like that. Remotion sort of circumvents that problem by instead taking screenshots which come with all of that baked in, right? When you take a screenshot, you're sort of getting an already encoded and compressed file and stitching them all into getting a final video is a lot more straightforward of an exercise. One of the ways that the interesting ways that affects scale when you approach it this way is that remotion rendering and the cost that it has is dependent on your CPU, not your GPU. If you were to render hundreds of videos or thousands of videos conventionally by using a more traditional way of rendering, you would incur very heavy GPU costs, which typically is more expensive than CPU. Whereas the cost associated to remotion rendering is sort of the ability to spin up your app in a new tab and take a screenshot. And that is a very CPU bound exercise. It uses no GPU whatsoever. The only part where your GPU actually comes into play is to paint that site once. So by virtue of that, one of the things that end up happening is that as you scale more, if you go from 1,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 1 million, your CPU costs sort of plateau out a lot sooner, and your GPU costs never quite hit an uptick. And one happy accident of approaching it this way is that because we're screenshotting frames and each frame is an independent React component, so to speak, you can scale your remotion renderer horizontally. So you don't have to have a powerful CPU, you can just have 4 CPUs and parallelize this whole thing together. A lot of ways to make this work and scale this, things that we've experimented with, some at Headout, some at outside in my client work and things along those lines. But overall, I quite like this idea. I quite like the idea of being able to use my markup, my styling to be able to design and write and publish videos that would have otherwise had me use tools like Photoshop to first design the frames, then import them to After Effects, and then export them to Premiere, and then use Media Encoder to encode them. I'm a very design and front-end guy, and writing a little bit of React and a little bit of CSS is a lot easier. Okay, 82 years and 3.5 billion. 82 years is not my age, that's for sure. And 3.5 billion sounds just like a number, but anyone wants to guess what this is? Like both of these, any guesses, arbitrary guesses? What could 82 years be? Okay, fair enough. That's not too far off, but close. YouTube creation, okay. What about 3.5 billion? What do you think that is? Watch hours is interesting. First YouTube video, what? Views on the first video. Oh, interesting. Okay. Views is close. Watch hours is a bit off, but I'll explain what this is. 82 years worth of video is uploaded each day online on the internet. And there are 3.5 billion viewers that watch them all. This is actual watch hours in general. This is not watch hours of a particular video. This is watch hours in general. And what these two numbers here tell you is the size of a very, very large opportunity. There is a lot of videos to be made, but also video at scale is hard. Netflix, Prime, Hotstar, even for that matter, have managed to crack a lot of engineering challenges, a lot of technical breakthroughs have made this possible. Both of these numbers, in fact, YouTube, for instance, the world's most robust playback engine is what I would call them. And what I see here is opportunity, right? What I want to do in the next chapter of sort of my career going forward is that because we know this is a huge opportunity, I want to help individuals and sort of teams make the most out of this opportunity, meaningfully speaking. You know that video is the most consumed medium in the whole world, which means there's two sides to it, right? Either we make a lot more video. I personally don't like that idea all that much because I think the signal to noise there isn't quite the same. I would rather focus on helping people make better videos. And so, because we're at Pune FOSS, and because this is a FOSS conference, I want to introduce to you two of my own projects very quickly. One of them is Rusty Motion. For those of you who don't quite like the idea of Node.js and servers and things like that, this is one of my projects. You can check it out on GitHub. It is a Rust-based local renderer, one that doesn't need a server, that will use your default browser to render your remotion videos. You can take that, give it a shot. For those of you who don't quite like the JavaScript ecosystem, this is an option. And the second one is a tool called SCAP. Now, SCAP is short for screen capture. It's a modern screen capture engine. I mentioned technical challenges being very, very deep in the video universe, especially at scale. And one of the things that you would notice is that when you're screen sharing, either via Slack, Google Meet, or Teams, or just any sort of screen share, the kind of quality that you get out of it is very limited by how many packets can be sent over the wire over the internet, right? I was on the hunt for something that would sort of like break that ceiling and allow me to capture the highest quality video possible. And when I say highest quality, I'm thinking 4K, 120 FPS, maybe 240 if my monitor supports it. But I couldn't quite get there. And so I started about a year ago this quest to make SCAP, screen capture. It's a library written in Rust that runs cross-platform, Windows, macOS, Linux. It's community supported, MIT licensed. And I started this alone, but eventually a set of people came together, helped me out with it, and we sort of expanded support to more platforms. This is exactly what Max said in his conversation in the beginning. This set of people have never been in the same time zone, have never been in the same room, don't know of each other. Pranav is an interesting case. He's an alumni of COEP right here. So I'm standing where perhaps he once stood. Rohan, there's me, there's Nightmare XD, who's from Iran, would you believe it? He introduced support for Windows. There is MALBA124, who we have no idea who he is, but he just showed up one day and he's like, I want this to run on Linux, and it now runs on Linux. And there's Anubhav at the end, who also helped us with support for adding audio to our capture. We're hoping to grow this over a lot. So if you'd like to give it a start, you can scan that code, head over to GitHub, open a few issues, look through the docs, give it out a spin. Cargo adds SCAP. It's a Rust library. You can install it in your projects. And yeah, thank you for listening. You can find me online at these places. I'm happy to help any of you with remotion, with SCAP, with any sort of things that you think I can be useful with. And yeah, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Siddharth, for a great talk. Moving forward, how many of you want to contribute to Kubernetes? Any responses? Alright. So, and you're not sure, right, where to begin, right? So it can be overwhelming, but fear not. We have a great speaker with us, Faika Ansari, who is a DevOps engineer.
Thank you.
And today we'll explore the different parts of Kubernetes and how they work. To see how are the various ways of and the components are related to each other. Discuss the skills that you need to get started with Kubernetes and participate within the thousands of the contributors that will contributing in the Kubernetes. So without further ado, I would like to call upon the stage Faika to start the talk. Thank you so much.
सो मैम आपने वो किसको शेयर किया था फैज़ान को कैनवा कब शेयर हाँ
नहीं मिला है
कभी मिला इसको मैग्नेट अंदर डालो, ये बाहर,
Oh, would that not fall?
ये मैग्नेट इसके लिए
नहीं जाएगा.
नहीं जाएगा.
Actually वो बहुत मोटा कपड़ा है ना, तो फिर वो पूरा हल्का से हो जाएगा.
हाँ क्लिप भी है.
Clip is fine. Clip लगा. हो गया? I hope this doesn't fall.
चेक कर ले एक बार.
Yeah. I was just asking you to click my pictures. I was to give you my phone.
ये यहाँ पे मैंने रखा.
दे दो मुझे.
I'll take pictures.
Yeah, from this is